All right, good afternoon, class. Good afternoon. Uh, Two quick notes before we get started. Number one, I really enjoyed last class, and I enjoyed it because some of where we went was directed by your own curiosity and questions and not by what I had planned. I think that makes it more enjoyable. My goal for this class is for us to spend a semester wondering about how the world works and seeing if we can come up with some answers. I've got some ideas about where that might lead and how we might do that, but I'm also very open. The direction of that doesn't have to be dictated by me. It really doesn't. So I'm happy to rewrite the midterm. If we spend the next 3 weeks just talking about skydiving, I can change the midterm to be all about skydiving. So I tend to develop an assessment and then try to get us to that assessment, but I have to change it. I'm also fine with that. So yeah, I enjoyed that. So keep the questions coming. And I might have answers. I will almost definitely not have answers to some questions, but I like the questions. Thing number two I wanted to mention before we get back into some skydiving was those blasted eye clickers. One of these days we'll get them figured out. Something I just realized, I think yesterday. If you're using the phone app, well, I got an email from the iClicker people that said you're going to want to update the app. So if I don't know when they pushed out 2.3 or something, they want you to update your app. I don't know why. But first of all, you do need to make sure, if you're using the real clicker, the white device, you need to make sure you're on frequency AA. That's important. I think it just says it right on the front, right? It says you're on AA. So I have a receiver up here. I was looking to see. Let's see. Hopefully we'll eventually get to electromagnetic radiation, and we might even use this thing as a demo, but I'm assuming this thing's some frequency around 2.4 gigahertz, and your device needs to be talking to this on the same frequency. So it's my little base station here is on frequency AA. If you're using the phone app, when you go to, I think, profile, your student ID, maybe someone that's been doing this and knows that they're getting credit because their grade is 100 or something can verify this. I think your student ID actually needs the @virginia.edu. No, I'm getting at least one nod. Yeah? Or not? No, don't need that. Okay. Well, if you aren't getting credit, try the other one. So if you're not getting credit and you've got the @virginia.edu, switch it. I took my app last night and I put in one of y'all's email addresses and I got credit only after I added .edu. I don't know. Oh, and here's the other thing about iClickers, and I just don't want to ever talk about them again, but it's UVA. Do you know one of the great things about UVA is I trust you. You just email me and say, I swear I was in class every day this semester, and I believe you. It's great. It's a great system. I love that. I don't have to go, I don't know, I need an alibi, or I'm going to look at the camera. So, yeah, I trust you. And you're old enough, you should want to have integrity, so that should be an email you feel good about sending. Okay. Let's talk about skydivers. Last class, let's look at this. Last class we were talking about good old Felix Baumgartner, and these were the iClicker question asked you what his velocity looked like, and I tricked you and told you, I tricked a lot of you into not guessing B, which was technically his velocity. And I feel like I was running a long time, so I kind of moved on. I did want to revisit that because I did stump enough people. I don't want to just be like, hi, you're wrong, moving on. I do want us to think about that. So I think all four of those are valid skydiving velocity profiles. So so first of all, just remember that those are talking about velocity. That's how fast you're going. That's your rate of change of position. So when you jump off of anything, at least for a second, your velocity is going to look like D. Unless you're like jumping straight into some syrup or something. But if you're jumping into air, at least for a second, your plot's going to look like D. In other words, you're going to accelerate constantly. So remember, the slope of that plot is your acceleration, which is your rate of change of velocity. So the slope of your velocity, in other words, how quickly it's changing, should be constant at least for a second. And for most of us, for most of the time, anytime you do anything, when I take a basketball, and I did this the other day with the velocity meter, and I throw it up in the air, the acceleration of that was pretty much right at 9.8 the whole time. Air resistance did not really come into play when I do that. You got to be going really fast, or your weight to surface area ratio has to be pretty big or pretty small. So either you have to be going crazy fast or have some crazy surface area thing going on in order for your acceleration to be anything other than 9.8 if you're near the surface of the Earth. So that's one thing I wanted to know, that you jump off of a table, your plot's going to look like D till you hit the ground. That's it. Most skydivers, and this is another thing I wanted to talk about today, is kind of like the altitude difference. Most skydivers get in a little prop plane, and that prop plane climbs them up to 10, 15,000 feet above sea level, and then they jump off. The main reason for that is that prop plane can't fly much higher than that because air starts getting thinner the higher up you go, but probably the main reason is any higher than that, you're going to need special apparatus to jump out of the plane because, as we probably know, air gets thinner the higher up you go. You fly into Denver Airport. Denver Airport's only 5,000 or 6,000 feet above sea level, and they've already got like signs in the airport saying, just so you know, you might get altitude sickness. Just 5,000 feet above sea level, there's less oxygen in the air, and your body has to adjust. And like Olympic athletes, they train, you don't have to get crazy high, they train at 8,000 feet or something, and that's low enough oxygen that your body feels a difference. I don't know if anyone's ever experienced that, but fly from Virginia at sea level, fly straight to Denver, go straight to the top of a 14,000 foot mountain and go skiing, and you one run and you're gasping for breath. So anyway, most skydivers jump out around 10, 15,000 feet above sea level. The air is thinner, there's less oxygen, yes, you do have to worry about that, but it's still pretty low. It's low enough that you probably don't need any special breathing apparatus. It's the same height as a decently high mountain, not a Virginia type mountain, but Colorado's known for the 14ers. There's a bunch of 14,000 foot mountains. That's like skydiving height. And you can go skiing, hiking at 14,000 feet. So the reason I bring that up is when your typical skydiver jumps out of an airplane, they're already in the atmosphere. It's not that much different than just jumping off a desk right here. They're already in a dense atmosphere, and so as soon as they start speeding up, they're going to start experiencing more and more air resistance, and their curve's going to look like C there. Right at the beginning, it's 9.8. Right at the beginning, they're accelerating just like you would if you jumped off a desk. But then pretty soon, just because most of us are familiar with miles per hour, the other day I said, 9.8 meters per second is like 22 miles an hour. So the person jumps out of a plane, 1 second later, they're going 22 miles an hour. Another second later, they're going 44 miles an hour. Another second later, they're going 66 miles an hour. And if you've ever held your hand out of the window at 66 miles an hour, that's appreciable. And then an 88, and then so on. Pretty soon, the air resistance becomes appreciable, and what you're left with is, here's your skydiver person, here's their weight. That's true for all skydivers. All skydivers have weight. This is the diagram of somebody that just jumped off a desk. That's the diagram of someone that just jumped out of a plane. But after a few seconds, this little drag, F sub D, this little drag starts growing and growing and growing. And so the acceleration you're feeling, F net, over your mass, that acceleration goes down, or another way to say that is the slope of that graph decreases. It goes from steep to less steep to less steep to less steep. because the total force, the net force, is decreasing. Because I've got my weight minus whatever that drag force is, because that drag force is in the other direction. Eventually, that drag force grows and grows and grows till it's the same as your weight, and your net force is 0, and you're not accelerating. The slope of that line is flat, and you've reached what's called terminal velocity. Okay, we talked about that last class. Now, interestingly, terminal velocity really depends on a lot of things. And so the terminal velocity of a piece of paper is really low. If you've ever seen dust in a sunbeam flying around your house, terminal velocity of dust is pretty much 0. Take a piece of dust, let it go. It can just hang there because its weight is so small compared to its surface area that just the slightest air current will keep it afloat. So terminal velocity can be roughly 0 for some things, like dust. Okay, so a skydiver will approach 0, and it'll look like C. For A, I guess what A would look like is if you jumped out of the airplane wearing your squirrel suit, and then you, I don't know, or you just were like this, and you slowly became more and more aerodynamic. You could speed up, or you're always speeding up. You could increase your acceleration. So A is a little weird, but I can imagine a situation like that where you, you jumped out, or you jumped out wearing a parachute, and your parachute slowly eroded or something, and faster, 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 like that. Something like that. Okay, so then B is pretty weird, and totally excused for not guessing that. B is pretty weird. Here's what's different about B. When Baumgartner jumped out of his plane, he wasn't at typical skydiving height, 10, 15,000 feet. He was at about 120,000 feet. So we're talking 10 times higher than your typical skydiver. We're talking 3 or 4 times higher than a commercial airliner flies. He was way up there, higher than airplanes can possibly fly. He had to take a balloon up there. And so he was so high up, when he jumped, his acceleration was crazy, or his acceleration was roughly 9.8. There was no air for him to be slowed down by, so his acceleration was 9.8, and he fell like a rock without hardly any air resistance. Then once he encountered the atmosphere, he was already going faster than his terminal velocity. So a terminal velocity is something determined by like your how big you are and how heavy you are, what kind of suit you're wearing, things like that, and your speed. You can actually exceed your terminal velocity. That's not crazy. So say some skydivers reach his terminal velocity, and then all of a sudden he comes a little ball or pencil or something. He can increase his terminal velocity. So you can go faster than your terminal velocity for a particular situation. So that's what happened to him. So that, I know that's a little weird. So he was already going like 800 miles an hour when he encountered the atmosphere. So here he is entering the atmosphere where terminal velocity is maybe 150 miles an hour, and he's going 800 miles an hour. So he's way down here at the bottom of that B plot. He's going faster than his terminal velocity. So what happens is he kind of gets back to his terminal velocity from the bottom. Most skydivers get to their terminal velocity from the top, like plot C. He got to his from the bottom. Both situations, you're going to asymptotically or eventually, gradually get to that terminal velocity. But most people do this because they're diving into the air. He was already going too fast when he got into the air, and he had to slow up to his terminal velocity rather than speed up, I guess, or slow down to whatever. Yeah. Yep. Let's see. That's a good question. The question was, wasn't he always going his terminal velocity? So you could pick some point. Okay, right now, your terminal velocity is, and it is a factor of the, actually for the right part of the plot, For the right part of the plot, you're already going to terminal velocity. He had to slow up to that, but then for a while, then he was probably going his terminal velocity, and then the air got heavier, and then it changed, and the air got heavier, and it changed. That's a really good point. Yeah. So he kind of had to slow down, and then he was in this situation that as the air he was in got denser, he had to slow. His terminal velocity decreased, and he went with it. That's kind of crazy. So in order to slow down, which is actually what's happening, his drag when he initially ran into the atmosphere was more than his weight. So, and this is the last thing I wanted to talk about that. In this picture, you might think that's a picture of somebody going up. Because look, there's more force pushing up. And a really important distinction, I think I mentioned this last class, you can definitely accelerate in the direction opposite of your motion. And so when I'm going 50 miles an hour down the highway and I hit the brakes, I'm accelerating backwards. I'm not going backwards, I'm just accelerating backwards. In other words, my change in velocity is negative, if we call that positive. So when you hit the brakes, you're accelerating in the opposite direction. Here's a guy whose net force is up. That doesn't mean he's going up. Doesn't mean he's traveling in the upward direction. This means he's accelerating up, which can mean he's just slowing down in the downward direction. So he was going down at 800 miles an hour, and now he's slowing down. He's now going 700, 600, 500, but still going down, but he's just slowing down in the downward direction. Take a second to wrap your head around that, but that's what happened. So that's how he slowed to his terminal velocity, which not many people do. Question? Two very good questions. So the first question was, did they anticipate that? Pretty well. I think you can, the atmosphere is turbulent and there's some unknowns, and that's why there was always this, is he going to make it? So there were some unknowns, but they did know how high they knew pretty well, not super accurately, pretty well how high he was going to get to in his balloon. And so that is determined by the size of the balloon and the weight of the balloon. And they probably did some trials and every time, so they knew he was going to get to about 120,000. And they knew the air was pretty thin up there. So yeah, that part of it was probably pretty well determined. And then, so then here's a guy that when he's falling, there's almost no resistance. As soon as he jumps out, you can imagine this, there's almost no air resistance, nothing on him at all. So he can turn, do whatever he wants. Then all of a sudden he has air, once he starts encountering the atmosphere, he has air rushing past him. And that's when, just one elbow out will cause you a twisting force. And that's when, entering the atmosphere, if you're not already just aligned right, things can go wrong. And that was part of the problem is you have to do that just right, because when there's no atmosphere, you can't reorient yourself. So you actually accidentally jump out and give yourself a spin. There's nothing to correct yourself, and you're just tumbling already. Then once you encounter the atmosphere, you have to then start using that new atmosphere to correct your spin, but not over-correct. And so, there was definitely a risk that could have gone wrong. That's a good question. Okay. Before we leave just atmosphere in general, and we're going to talk about a couple other things, I did want to make sure, because this came up, and I think it's important for us as Earthlings to understand, the whole atmosphere thing. So the Earth, I could use this basketball. The Earth is large. It's around 8,000 miles across, diameter-wise, if I remember right. It's very large. So I think, imagine this basketball. This is 8,000 miles. The atmosphere is, let's see, maybe 100,000 feet, so 20 miles. So if this is 8,000 miles across and your atmosphere is 20 miles, the analogy I've used before is take this basketball, paint it with a good layer of paint. That's the atmosphere. So a basketball with a layer of paint on it. So as Earthlings, it's pretty important to know that the thing keeping us alive by providing us with the air we breathe, but also providing us shelter from cosmic radiation, we'd all be dead if there wasn't this thin, delicate little layer between us and space. So in that picture, I think you can see it. That's the atmosphere. So all of the planes that fly, all the weather you've ever experienced, all the thunderstorms you've ever seen, all the air that you breathe is all in this very, very thin little layer of our planet. So there's your lesson for the day. Take care of it. It's not that big. It's not a ton to go around. We all 7 billion of us have to share this little layer of paint. The other thing I wanted to note about that is, if you think about it, I don't know if you've ever thought about it, but the reason there is atmosphere, the reason it's on the Earth, same reason you're on the Earth. It's just gravity. So there's just a bunch of, so you take, take anything and drop it, it'll it'll fall to the earth. There it is at its lowest state. It hit the table. Air molecules are the same thing. They're just little massive objects that are they just have fallen to earth too. And so really there's just a pile of air molecules. They can't go through the floor there, so they're just piled up. That's it. So that's our atmosphere. Our atmosphere is just a bunch of stuff piled on, like you could imagine snow piling up. Air is the same thing. You've just got a thin layer, just a few miles thick, that's just resting on the surface, just like everything else. Like you and the cars and the dirt is resting on the surface. Just there's air just piled on, and that's it. So it's thin and delicate. Take care of it. And then also, just again to give us a picture of scale, let's see, in Virginia, I think a good mountain is, what, 5,000 or 6,000 feet, I think, roughly. So the atmosphere, when you go up 5,000 or 6,000 feet, climb a mountain in Virginia, you don't need any breathing apparatus. Go to Colorado, go to the top of a 14,000 foot mountain. Also, you might notice a difference, but also the air is pretty much the same. You're not going to need a breathing apparatus. I think the people that climb Mount Everest probably bring oxygen with them. Mount Everest is like close to 30,000 feet, I think. So that's it. Right now in Virginia, we're about sea level, 30,000 feet. That's about as much as you have, 30,000 feet, till you're about out of atmosphere. That's about where commercial airliners fly. So if you were to jump out of a commercial airliner, it would be really cold, and I don't think you'd be able to breathe too well until you fell a little bit lower. So 30,000 feet is kind of where we start running out of air. That's pretty much where commercial airlines fly. And then above that, much above that is like where you can take a balloon. And then, you'll need a balloon to get much higher than that. And so Baumgartner's balloon pretty much got to the top of what you might call the atmosphere, because that's what a balloon does. A balloon goes up till there's no more buoyant force, and it ran out of air to sit on. And it was big enough that it was able to get really, really high, like 120,000 feet or something. So just in terms of scale, I know I don't like using feet, but I'm stuck with that. I can do that in terms of meters, I suppose. But anyway, 120,000 feet is kind of the top of the atmosphere. And that's not much, considering the Earth is like 6,400 kilometers, so 6,400,000 meters in diameter, I think, or radius. Yeah, that's a really good question. Did the balloon expand as it went up? If you watched that particular launch, or if you've ever watched any weather balloon launch, it's sometimes you wonder, why does every weather balloon look like this very long teardrop shape? Have you ever seen like weather balloon launch? It looks like a big sag. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? So it looks like it's weird shaped. It doesn't look like a hot air balloon. It doesn't look like a kid's toy, like a party balloon. It's this very long shape, and there's just a little bubble of air in the top, and it's really long. And the reason for that is, as you climb, there's a pretty constant pressure on the inside, and the pressure on the outside decreases, and it fully inflates by the time it gets to the top. So, so it was a big round balloon at the top, but when he was on the ground, it looked like hardly a balloon at all. It looked like a big, saggy thing, and it just enough to get him up, and then it expanded. Good question. Yeah. That's a great question. The question was, where do balloons go? Most of them pop. Most of them pop because if you let go of, you mean like whether, well, two things. If you were to release a party balloon, that is latex or rubber. This is not going to last that long. It's going to get up there. It's probably going to expand until it pops. That's usually it. So it could either expand until it pops. That's probably most balloons. If it was slightly leaky, you might be able to get it so it expanded, and as it expanded, it leaked a little bit, and then it would go east. Another thing that I don't know how common knowledge this is. You don't have to go very high up. I forget, like 10,000 feet or something. All of a sudden, you're going 200 miles an hour if you're in a balloon. The jet stream is nuts. The jet stream is zipping around, and the jet stream is. So, next time you're watching the weather, and they say the jet stream is dipping down, that is a crazy flow of air. So if you were to let go of a party balloon, within a couple minutes, it's going 200 miles an hour. And it's caught in the jet stream. It'll eventually get high enough, it'll pop. Or say we're to be lucky enough that, like I said, it leaks or something, it would probably go to England and keep going, and eventually that latex or rubber would degrade, especially due to all the sunlight. There's not much protection from the sunlight up there, and it would eventually pop. or it could totally leak and then come back down. And some people do that. It's kind of fun. Tie a little note to a balloon, let it go, say, hey, call me when you get this, and you can get a phone call from Spain or something. Question? Not a dumb question. So the reason it expands, you put helium into the balloon or hot air. You might remember from chemistry class that, well, yeah, no, actually, we don't need to get into that. It's pretty much a constant pressure in there, and it does, when you blow up a balloon, the balloon will stop increasing in size when there's an equilibrium. So this is actually good discussion like for us in this class. So equilibrium means all the forces cancel out. So when the rubber is pulling in and there's pressure on top from the air, equalized by the pressure inside, the air balloon's a constant volume. And you walk around all day and your balloon doesn't really change size. Let it go, and two of those things are constant. Pressure in the inside, constant. Balloon pulling down, constant. The air squeezing the balloon starts decreasing. So the amount of pressure from the outside starts decreasing. So there's more on the inside. That imbalance causes it to inflate. And as it goes higher and higher and higher, and pressure goes down, 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 it inflates, inflates, and eventually probably pops. Most of them are going to pop. Yeah. Oh, wow, that's a great question. How far away did he land from the launch site? I have no idea, but just based on the fact that he went through the jet stream, his flight profile, like say he left from Ohio, he probably would have, I mean, he would have wanted to not launch from the East Coast. He would have landed in the water. So he probably went up, he probably went a couple hundred miles to the east and then pretty much straight down until his parachute came out. But I bet when you're stuck in a balloon, you can't really steer. I bet he went a couple hundred miles to the east. I didn't think about that. They must have planned that pretty well. So launched from Kansas and landed in Kansas, I guess. I don't know, something like that. Yep. Wow, that was a good question. Did he experience a sonic boom? Yeah. He'd probably know for a couple of reasons. Let's see. When he was going faster than, so the question's about the sonic boom. When he was going faster than the speed of sound, he was probably in, so speed of sound is particular for a particular medium. And so the speed of sound here in this classroom is different than the speed of sound a couple miles up. Where he broke the speed of sound was probably thin enough atmosphere that the boom wasn't too big, is a guess of mine. But also, a sonic boom isn't much of a boom for the person making it. So when you're in a jet plane and your jet plane speedometer goes past the speed of sound, there actually isn't much of a, there isn't a boom. There isn't a boom. And I don't know if that's in the scope of this class, so I'll just say it real quick because I don't know if we'll ever get to it again. There's not a boom. A sonic boom is just a pressure wave passing you by. So you experience a boom just because there was a constant pressure wave, and as it passes people, that guy goes, whoa, what was that? Then this guy goes, whoa, what was that? And this guy goes, what was that? And everyone goes, wow, I just heard a boom. But the boom was just a big pressure wave passing your eardrums, but the guy making the boom isn't hearing any booms. He's just creating a pressure wave that all of us experience as booms as they pass us by. If that makes any sense. So he did break the sound barrier, which is, I feel like that term is a little bit misleading. He exceeded the speed of sound in the medium he was in, and I don't think he experienced much as a result. If that's satisfactory. Okay. Yeah, two more questions. 55, okay, good. So, and I said a couple hundred. Thank you for Googling that. So I guess he was probably smart. He probably avoided the jet stream. So the jet stream, when you watch the weather, is this kind of line that goes through the map. Yeah, it would be dumb to look at the weather that day and go, all right, let's go. The jets. I'm going to go right through the jet stream. Because then he would have gone up 200 miles and down. So he probably waited till the jet stream was not. Hopefully it was in the spring or something. I think when the jet stream is in Canada, unless he did this in Canada, I don't even remember. But thank you for Googling that. Okay. Okay. I think that is enough about that. Yeah. Oh wait, I have one demo about that I want to do. Then we're gonna do an iClicker question. Here's the demo. I've been wanting to do this for days. I keep having this demo out here and I keep not doing it. Let's try this. so I can stop. Here I have, I think, yeah, okay. Okay. Here I have a bunch of weights on a string that are they equally spaced? I can't tell from here. Due to my perspective, they look very not evenly spaced. They're not evenly spaced. Okay, let's do the evenly spaced ones. Okay. Do you know the column? Everyone knows that, right? The columns on the lawn aren't evenly spaced, right? They look evenly spaced from when you stand on the rotunda. Is that right? Isn't that something? Okay. Are these evenly spaced? Yes. Okay. Good. So here's the whole point of just a real quick demo. As we've been talking about free fall, and free fall is just a particular type of acceleration. When you're on a planet and there's not many other forces acting on you, you're going to accelerate at 9.8. And so this first weight down there below the surface of the table, isn't going to have long to accelerate. And so it's not going to be going that fast when it makes that sound. When it hits the metal plate below, it goes that sound. The one above it will have been traveling longer by the time it gets down, so it'll have actually gained more speed. And so I don't know how far these are apart, like 2 feet. It's going to cover the next 2 feet quicker. And the next one will cover its next 2 feet quicker. And let's see what the sound we hear is. If I can do this. I think that was the sound I was hoping to hear. I think that's sped up, right? We heard that it up. Okay, good. These weights, oh yeah, I can tell these aren't spaced evenly. These weights are spaced quadratically. They go from one distance to a square that distance, to a square that distance, to a square that distance. And I hope this is a cool demonstration of how it gets faster and faster and faster. So one thing that I haven't talked about much is that when your velocity curve is a nice straight line, so in other words, you're accelerating constantly, like somebody that just jumped off a table. When your velocity curve is a nice straight line, that means you're increasing your velocity constantly. So you're going 9.8, 19.6, you're going just very steadily increasing your velocity. You're increasing your displacement, in other words, how far you're going, exponentially. So as your velocity keeps increasing, how quickly you're covering ground goes up exponentially. And so this, if I'm right, this should be a nice, even, like metronome sound. I think that worked, right? I hope so, because that was the whole reason that was out here. Okay, moving on. Okay. Let's do an eye clicker question. Let's see. Here's iClicker question number 1 for the day. All right. Voting has begun, so go ahead and tell me what you think that is. Okay, take 10 more seconds, lock in your vote. That is a vinyl record. Nice. Okay. That is a vinyl record. And I believe that recording is in stereo. 'Cause I think if I remember where I got that picture, you know, you put the needle on the record, and the up and down of the record is one signal. Maybe that's the left speaker, and the right left of the needle is the other speaker. And you can actually encode two channels in one track. Physicists or scientists love when they can encode data in a wave. There's 2 bits of data encoded in one wave, left, right, and up, down. And if my stereo knows how to do it, my stereo can decode the up, down into one channel and the left, right, into another channel. So that's a vinyl record. Why the heck are we bringing that up, by the way? I've got 8 of these, and they're all things that make you think about perspective a little bit differently. That's the whole point, because we're going to talk about some things where we have to think about perspective. So I've got 7 more of these, and they all hopefully just challenge your perspective a little bit. Okay, let's do another one. So let's see. Yeah. And let's see, we're going to try to crank through these, so let's do like 45 seconds. All right, 3, 2, 1. Looks like most of us got that one. That is Velcro. Yeah, nice. Good job. Still, we've had it around for years. Still an amazing, amazing invention. Just those little hooks and loops. But again, I don't know if you've ever seen it that close. We've got these great microscopes nowadays that we can take nice close-up pictures of that one. That one is pretty easy. This one's a little bit harder. We're going to keep cranking through them. Ready, go. You've got 45 seconds. All right, we're going to try to get through these. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Those are staples. Yeah, okay. Those are staples. You're looking right at the point of one staple, and you can see that it's partner staples, and you can even see a little bit of the adhesive. You're looking right on, and what you're seeing there, which I think is cool, you can see a little bit how it was manufactured. It used to be a straight line of wire, and it probably went into a clamp that snapped it, made it a little bit sharp at the end. So that's what you're looking at. So you can actually see the metal that was actually like a little bit in a liquid state for a second. It looks, I don't know, I like that one. All right, moving on. Next. Ready, go. 30 seconds. All right, 5 more seconds. Oh, we got an even split here. Pretty even split between what, E and D. Yeah. Okay, so most people are figuring out it is technology. 3, 2. Okay, the A's are going away. 3, 2, 1. Okay. 6 of you are holding on. All right, 3, 2, 1. Okay. That is technology. That is actually a microchip. Yep. I would encourage you to find a microscopic picture of an iPhone screen sometimes. Also fascinating, but particularly fascinating, the other parts of the iPhone, not the screen. I think this is a 64 gig version. 64 billion bytes of data in here. 64 billion? How do they fit? That's 64 billion individual things. Really, I'm not making that up. They don't cram like 100 into one thing. There's 64 billion individual things. How do they do that? They are fabricating wires at the atomic scale. It's amazing. If there's anything about your life that you should just go, I don't even deserve to be alive right now. These things, these are amazing. There's 64 billion things, not even these ones that have like Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and cell antennas, 3 antennas in here, and accelerometers and 2 cameras. Just the iPod, if it was just carrying around music, that's amazing enough. The fact that we are literally manufacturing down at the atomic level, and we use a crazy process called photolithography to actually create layers of conductive and non-conductive material at the atomic level. All right, that was only 4. All right, let's do 2 or 3 more. Let's get through them. Ready, go. That one's easy. I'll give you 20 seconds for that one, right? Huh? You're not. I think I'm going to give everyone full credit today. I'm not going to knock you for not knowing what that is. All right. Okay, 3, 2. Votes are still coming in. Yep, that is a stocking. Job. 3 more. Ready, go. Yep. You guys are good. That is, that's peer pressure right there. Yes. I love the 4 people hanging on. No, you guys are good. That is a nail. That is a nail. So it's a rusty nail. So you're seeing a little bit of crystallization happening there. That's kind of cool. All right, 2 more. Okay. Yep. All right, you guys are getting that one. Nice. Okay. 5 seconds. Okay. There we go. Yep, that is an eyebrow, which is gross. Okay, let's do 1 more. That's what people look like up close. And here's another one. Last one. Oh yeah, nice. People are getting this one too. It's true. It's true. That one's a tongue, and that's bacteria on it, I'm pretty sure. Okay. You can keep voting on that one. Actually, we're all looking good. Okay. So next class, we're going to talk about why in the heck I wanted to zoom in on a bunch of stuff. See ya Friday.